So what's a through port do? The idea of a through port is if we had a third device. It's rare today. Again, you know, I don't see the fortress of keyboards that often, but basically if I were to play this device, I would maybe want to control several devices. And as I play this one, the through port will repeat the messages, anything that comes in an input. So,
Call it a daisy chain.
yeah, a common name for it is to create what we call a daisy chain, where you can have a whole chain of devices. And as I play, we get like, I don't know, 10 devices all playing at once. Now, most people go, why would you want that? The big final countdown keyboard sound or something. No, one of the main reasons we might want it is to actually have independent control, and that's where the channel thing kind of comes into play. Or synchronization is a common reason we might have a lot of devices plugged in at once. It's pretty rare that you want to have, but anyway, I'll show it to you just briefly, just kind of show you the through. So I'll go for the through port. Question. Back to my little MIDI analyzer. Okay, if I play this device, what's going to happen from the through port? Nothing. The through is not an out. It does not transmit any information from the controller whatsoever. The through is only connected to the in. Basically, what comes in goes through. Really simple idea, right? So if I play this controller, what's going to happen? Any note on, note off, it's going to not only play this sound computer, its local sound computer, but also send MIDI through to another device. So it can keep the MIDI signal going and, you know, kind of have multiple devices going. And again, you could, yeah, it doesn't modify whatsoever. You know, it doesn't change velocity or anything. It's just it's just a copy of the signal, if you will. A lot of people say, oh, the through port that bypasses this one. That's not a good word. Why? Because this one plays. You know, it plays fine. It just also sends information through the through, so it's a repeat. It's maybe a better term for it. Good question would be, how many can I do? And I have a really great answer. Until it doesn't work. What could stop it? Generally, the 5-pin MIDI cable the protocol says it can go 50 feet. It's 5 volts. Are these devices actively retransmitting the 5 volts? It's never been in a manual. I've never been able to find that out if this is an active, through port and retransmitting the signal. So eventually it just stops. Probably the only place I'd ever hook up more than 5 or 6 or 7 devices would be a place like here, where I got like rack mount sound modules. What you might see, is like maybe a stage performance occasionally. Today what's happened is the computer's become the hub. It does everything from notation to, writing music, synchronizing everything, and it's just this central thing. And so basically all controllers kind of want to meet in this idea. Instead of a chain of devices, it's become a network of devices. And the way that you might have a home network where you got all these computers connected to this one router, through USB or a fancy MIDI interface, we're seeing that as a much more common way. We'll have this one interface, and every in and out from each device is sort of starred out as one big thing. And that's probably more common. You still occasionally might have a daisy chain for some oddball product or something, but it's become, especially with a computer, a more rare kind of situation. So, does the through make sense? In and out, we're good with those? Okay, so those are basic connections. I mentioned this briefly earlier, that the idea of MIDI is remote control. Again, one of these funny things is people think it sends the audio and so forth. No, it sends the messages, and the audio does not come back here. It just remotely controls it. But we also can control internally. This idea of local control is a really common thing, but it's a software switch. You can actually turn it off. That's how I stuck a note earlier. Basically, I made the controller and the sound computer independent devices. Why would I ever want to do that? Maybe I want to put a sequencer in between the two. Maybe I want to have this thing that records MIDI information and plays it back. What a really common other consulting call I used to get is that people would be playing their controller and there'd be an internal connection where it plays itself, but then they'd have that USB connection or MIDI connection going to the computer, and the computer would send that message back to the thing too, and then we get doubled notes. And so you get like piano drums. I don't know if you've ever had this with MIDI. It's really annoying. You're like, what the hell? And it's like, well, yeah, you're sending, you got 2 signal paths coming to the device. You have a local path internally, and then you got another remote control path. And so very often we want to turn that local feature off and make it basically a controller and a sound computer. Like I said, like the chainsaw, separating the 2 halves. But it basically really, divides it in half in the chart. Yeah. I'm going to pass out my cards. That was an agreement we had. So I do consulting, like I said. So if you have equipment, you'll need help with it and wiring up stuff, if you have specific questions and stuff like that. Again, I've been a trainer for like 15 years, teaching and consulting people. This is my payment tonight, so if you know other people that need help too, please come up with me. I do a website. It's not on here. You can find it from my main site, but it's called Creativity to Spare. And on that site, Creativity to Spare, it's a do-it-yourself podcast. I do video and photography, so I have a lot of expensive hobbies. And so what I've had to do over the years is figure out some really inexpensive ways to do stuff. Like the movies that I do, the lighting is from Home Depot. So how do you make that look good? How do you make an expensive tripod? How do you make all kinds of goofy stuff like that? How do you make general MIDI performances sound good? How to build a microphone for $20, just goofy stuff like that. If you're into that, do-it-yourself sort of stuff. But it is do-it-yourself. I need to stress that. I had a lot of students who are like, hey, come on over and we'll solder. And I'm like, I made the video and made the parts list so you could do it. But anyway, it's a lot of fun.